It has become a Kensington tradition to pause every now and then and to look back and celebrate the ways God is moving in, around, and through our community. We're overjoyed by the stories of Jesus moving in our midst. And here's the beautiful thing. We are not just spectators of God, but rather co-workers with God in all he's doing. We get to join him in his work. We get to be part of bringing the light and hope of Jesus to those close to us and even far away. So join us as we reflect on those powerful moments from just these past few months.
God moved through the Hope Water Project team as they ran, walked, and volunteered at the Detroit Marathon, all with the purpose of bringing clean, life-giving water to the Pokot people of Kenya.
I see these folks. I see the kids in my mind. I see the people in my mind, and how important it is that, we can just turn a tap on and it just comes right out, and they have to walk miles to get their clean water.
That kind of sacrifice alone is a beautiful thing. But some members in our community got to see something even more beautiful. The result of those individual sacrifices, when the wells gave forth sweet, clean water, and the Pokot threw up their arms and voices in ecstatic gratitude. Our Brazilian campus, Kensington's newest location in the Troy Chapel, prepared and executed a huge barbecue for more than 500 to benefit the work of our global partner in Brazil. Not only did the meal bring together this vibrant and growing Portuguese-speaking community, but all proceeds went to change the lives of children in Brazil by investing in a sports and Bible program, which is keeping impoverished kids off the streets. Our middle school program, Breakaway, launched the ministry season with their annual Soak or Die event. Even through the colorful chaos, the students' joyful laughter was evidence of God himself. Later, hundreds of students responded to the message, challenging them to take ownership of their faith. God is moving, and we're joining him to impact the next generation. Alpha is a course that explores the big questions of life and faith over a shared meal. It's a chance for people to sit down together, to listen and learn from one another.
I was tired of wearing that mask, putting that mask on every day, taking it off when you get home, and it's like I just wanted more. Being a part of this community has blessed me. Going in there, I prayed and I asked God, please place me at the table where I need to be so I can learn and grow. And I tell you, he placed me at the perfect table, and I've just had such an awesome time of hearing the word of God.
There were several retreats this past fall. Man Up, Wild for grades 6 through 12, Club 45 for 4th and 5th graders, and the Young Adults Rise Retreat. Nearly 1,500 of you came away with us and left your daily routine to connect with God and one another.
I've never imagined something like this. The way God has walked with me this weekend and touched me this weekend, to open my arms up to him and to accept him, and the people that he's led to me this weekend, I couldn't imagine. Like, the only way I can describe this is God.
For Thanksgiving this year, over 1,700 baskets were delivered to families from our local partner schools. What an honor it was to bring a feast to the door of people right in our own communities. The gift of a full meal freed many families from having to choose between a holiday meal or a week's worth of groceries or medication. One Kensington family reached out again to their basket recipients as Christmas approached and found that they were in a difficult financial state. The family from Kensington invited them to Christmas services and helped them to purchase gifts for their children. We saw God move through our 43 Christmas services as more than 40,000 heard about the birth of Jesus Christ at the perfect moment in history. The magnitude of these services and quantity is only possible because God moves. He moves our community to invite their neighbors, in-laws, and coworkers. And then he moves in our hearts during the service as we celebrate him in song and story. One of Kensington's values is through others. We make disciples who make disciples. Our partnership with Reuben Miracle in South Sudan is a beautiful example of this. Reuben was impacted by Kensington as a child, growing up in the Pokot region of Kenya. Nearly 2 decades later, he and his wife have responded to God's call on their own lives and they are making a gospel impact on the Toposa tribe of South Sudan through church planting.
We see being together under the umbrella of Christ is an opportunity to show their tribesmen about the new identity in Christ and how peace can flow through us to others. And even through the churches that we are planting in the region, it will bring cohesion and stability.
183 people made their faith in Jesus public by being baptized at all of our campuses this past November. There's nothing we love more than seeing someone emerge from the water, symbolizing new life in Christ.
For so many years, I felt alone, and I didn't think that God was there, but He always was, and I just didn't realize it. So that's why I'm here. I want to become more in first with God, yes.
These last months of 2019 were just full of God moving. And He moved in big spaces, on stages and large-scale events, and across the globe to each of our 10 global partners. But God also moved in smaller spaces, quietly in small groups, in silent prayers, and in the hearts of individuals. These are these holy and beautiful moments we get to experience. And we can't wait to see what God is going to do in 2020. Thank you for being on this mission with us to reach the one. It's such a privilege to be together on this journey.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. I love how that video just recapped all that God has been doing through our community here, and we are only in February, and there has already been so much life change. I cannot wait to see how He's going to continue to move through you guys to impact the kingdom. So my name is Faith, and I am our Kaleo Kids intern here at Kensington this year, and I have some exciting opportunities to share with you. So the first is our Daddy-Daughter Dance, and this is just a chance for our pre-K through our 5th grade girls to have a special night out with the male role model in their life. I grew up going to these dances with my dad and my sister through my school, and I think it's awesome that we get to do this as a church community. So you guys can dress up. There will be a DJ, dancing, food, a photo booth, some raffles. We have a jam-packed night full of fun stuff for you guys to do. So if you guys would like to buy your tickets, you guys can go online or go out to the hub, and they can help get you started with that. And if you have any questions, head on out to the K-Kids table after service, and they can answer any questions you might have. Now, I don't know if you are like me, but all of this sunshine has me really excited for summer, and we just finalized our summer retreat and camp schedule. We have everything from women's retreats to student camps to my personal favorite, our Kaleo camp. Seriously, there's a ton of great stuff we have for you, so you can head over to kensingtonchurch.org/retreats, check those out, look at it with your family, and make sure that you mark your calendars, because we would love to just grow with you and have fun with you over this summer. And so you guys have all joined us for week 1 of our new series, The Blessed Life. So I would love it if you guys would go ahead, stand up and say hi to the people around you, and crunch in towards the middle to make room on the ends.
Caught up in your presence, I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything. And more than anything that you can do, I just want you. I'm sorry when I've just gone through the motions. I'm sorry when I've just sang another song. Please take me back to where we start. I open up my heart to you. I'm sorry when I've just come with my agenda. I'm sorry when I forgot that you're enough. Please take me back to where we start. I open up my heart to you. I'm caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. No, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything. And more than anything that you can do, I just want you. I just want you, and nothing else, and nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you, and nothing else, and nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you, and nothing else, and nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you, and nothing else, and nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you, nothing else, nothing else, yeah, nothing else will do. I just want you, nothing else, nothing else, nothing else will do. Caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. No, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you.
That was just as good the second time. Man. Good morning. So I know that a lot of us in this room probably did not grow up going to church, but a number of you did. And I would bet that probably a number of you that did probably went to a church somewhat similar to the kind of church I went to growing up, where I learned a lot about God, but I think most of what I learned about God was the rules of God. And I learned very little, if anything, about the heart of God. And so for me, and maybe you're similar, what it did for me is it developed this idea of God in my head who was very angry and most of the time disappointed with me because I just couldn't live up to all the rules and expectations. And around my senior year in high school, my family ended up at a different church, and it was literally the first time in my life I had heard week after week the guy who was speaking talk very little about the rules of God and talked about the passion of God, and specifically about God's passionate heart for us. And I know at that time in my life there started to be this shift all of a sudden that took place where for me I began to view God less angry and disappointed in me and more in love with me. And that's the part of my life where I started to do more than just simply believe in God, but genuinely wanted to do what we just sang. I just wanted to give my whole heart to him and live my life for him. So this morning what we're going to do is we're going to start a whole new series, and that series has got one verse, one very simple verse that's going to drive both this morning and the next several weeks. So here's what I'd love to do, and I don't think I've asked you to do this with me yet, so if you would do this with me, I think it could be a great way to start the morning. Would you stand to your feet, and I'm going to ask you actually to do a couple things while you're up. In just a minute, we're going to put the verses on screen, and we're going to read the one verse that's going to start us. While you're up, would you take just a brief second, though, and can you crunch in as far as possible in your rows? I know you already got comfy and you settle your stuff down. We've literally, in the last few minutes, had people turn around and walk out the doors because our seats are just packed out in here. So if you could help us open up a few on the end, that would be awesome. I'll give you just a quick second to do that. If you can't, because there's somebody next to you and they're not moving, just push them. In the love of God, push them. All right, Matthew chapter 6, verse 21. This is Jesus speaking, and here's what I'd love to do. Can we read this out loud together? Here we go, let's read it together. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What I love about this verse is it's both a statement and a question. There's the statement, and here's the question. Do you believe that what God desires most from you is not your religious obedience, but it is the passion of your heart, because you're the passion of his. That's what I want to talk about today. So let me pray and ask that God, who I already think is here, would just fill this room in a supernatural way to speak to us. So let me ask him to do that. Father in heaven, I just want to take a knee before you, who is the King of all things, the Lord of all creation, who from the very breath of your mouth made all that is, from this planet to us as people, to the stars that hang in the sky, to galaxies we don't even have the capacity and ability to see yet. You made it all. And I love that you, who are that God, so big and grand, are also so personable. And you're here right now. Would you somehow help us on the spectrum of where we're at in belief? Would you help us to have an encounter with you in a way that only you can do? I can't make that happen. A band can't make that happen. A program can't make that happen, but you can. Meet us whether we're convinced you exist, or meet us if we're trying to figure that out right now and not sure if you exist. Meet us and do something that only you can do to convince us of this truth, this reality, that you are absolutely passionate about us. And what you long from us is the passion of our heart back. And pray this and ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. No, I was going to have you stand the entire morning. That's good. Sit. Thank you. Hey, quick question. I'm just curious, how many of you this morning, you're wearing some kind of a watch, Fitbit, Apple, something that tells you like heart rate, steps, all that kind of stuff? How many? Number of you? Yeah, good portion of you. So I used to dislike you people very much. I worked with this woman years ago, and we'd be in the middle of meetings all the time. The only way I know how to describe her is to call her like Fitbit junkie. I don't know. But we're in the middle of meetings, we're intense, we're planning stuff, like totally inappropriate time to do anything but be fully engaged in the moment. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she'd do one of these. Yeah, and I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, I gotta get my steps in. I gotta get all my steps in. I'm like, you're nuts, man. You need to chill out. Like, we would try to take the watch from her when she'd take it off sometimes. Like, you are crazy. And then I got one not long after that. The reason I ended up getting one is I had this weird heart thing and it was arrhythmia. And so I had to wear a monitor for a week. And then I thought, well, I should probably have a watch to tell me better what my heart's doing all the time. So I started wearing one. And that's when I realized that there's a whole Fitbit community that exists. And we're all crazy. And there's competitions between us. And my love language is competition. And so we would have these groups at our church where we would compete with one another, and it all culminated on the weekend. And so I would wear it, and it got so bad for me that I would literally be reading. I'm like, if you would turn to the book of Luke, and I'd do this, and I'd go, my steps are low. And I would just start walking on this. I never walked so much as when I was wearing that thing. I would come home during this season of life dead tired on a Sunday. And I'd be like, I don't know what's wrong with me, man. Am I getting old? What is the problem? And then I started to realize I was averaging like 20,000 steps by noon on Sunday. I'm like, I gotta stop wearing this dumb watch. So I still have it, but I stopped wearing it. But the reason we pay attention to our heart and to what it's doing on our watches and everything and all of our different stats, because it tells us something about our overall health. True? My dad had a heart attack this last year, and I was in the hospital with him, and I asked him, like, Dad, did you notice anything, or did it just, like, come on? He's like, yeah, I noticed a little something. Things were kind of weird. And I was thinking he's going to say, like, for a few hours. I said, well, like, for how long? A few weeks. Like, a few weeks? So why didn't you say anything to Mom? He's like, I just thought I needed more sleep. Like, what is, like, sleep, the warm rag? Like, how's that going to fix it? I don't get it. But, like, we have to pay attention to our heart, because the condition of our heart determines the health of our overall being. One of the things I do when I'm in the gym is I constantly pay attention to my heart, because we know that there's a certain zone for your heart rate that can literally begin to reshape your body, right? It's the fat burning zone. So I'm always looking. I'm like, I gotta make sure I'm in the right zone. I gotta make sure I'm in the healthiest zone. And here's the thing I love. This is as much a spiritual principle as it is a physical principle. All throughout the Bible, there is a concept that we're gonna talk about starting today and throughout the rest of this series of a zone that God invites us to live into, that he literally makes possible for us to step into, this zone that we can live in that is the healthiest zone to be in. A zone that is not just like spiritual, but a zone that's as much physical in its implication and in its outpour. Like, it affects our relationships, it affects our well-being, it affects our mentality, it affects our joy, it affects our marriages. And it is a zone that's measured in the same way as this zone of weight loss. It's measured by the condition of your heart. And I want to refer to the zone this morning and a couple times throughout today and even throughout the series as this. It is the blessed zone. The blessed zone. Now, I don't know about your background in church. That might be a word that you're either very accustomed to and feels good to you, or it might be a weird word, because that's not a word that we usually use on any given day. Like, we don't walk around using that word. So I want to give you a brief definition. Because this word and this whole series is actually taken out of a book called The Blessed Life. The picture right here. So The Blessed Life is a book written by a man named Robert Morris. And here's the cool thing about this series. This is honestly about 2 years, if I understand correctly, in the making of us talking about doing this series, wrestling with how to do it, when to do it, why to do it. And we finally came to a point that we realized now's the time. So I think this is a great series for us to do. I love the way that Robert Morris lays out this concept throughout his book. But here's what he says about blessed, and give a little bit of kind of definition to it. He says this: being blessed means having supernatural power working for you throughout the day. The days of a blessed person are filled with divine coincidences and heavenly meaning. A blessed man or woman may or may not be wealthy by the world's standards, but nonetheless, they enjoy a quality of life that even most billionaires would envy. At different points throughout the Bible, God tells those who will obey him that he will bless everything to which they put their hands. That's what the blessed life is like. So here's my desire throughout this series. I think this is a real place to live. There is this zone that we can get into with God that is a product of how we respond to the instructions he gives us about life, how we really do what Matthew said, give our heart to him, that has this unbelievable impact on our lives that is described by God himself as blessed. And if this is a real thing, which I believe it is, I want my life in that place. I want your life in that place. But here's the thing too, that some of you might be starting to kind of put some things together this morning. You're going, wait a minute, okay, so it's blessed and we're talking about treasure in your heart. And let me actually give you one more verse as we're trying to understand this. In the book of Acts, Acts chapter 20 says it this way. In everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak. Remembering the words of the Lord Jesus himself, he said this, it is more, say it, blessed to give than to receive. So even Jesus says there is this zone to get into where it's more blessed when you give. Now here's what I think some of you might be doing in your heads. You're starting to put everything together. You're going, okay, now you've thrown in another verse and we're going to give, then to receive, and where treasures in my heart is. This is a money series. I got it. No, it's not a money series. And I want to be really clear on this. This is a series about this idea of stepping into the full blessings of God. The thing is, though, and here's what's inseparable in the scriptures, your heart and your stuff are all intertwined with how it is we do or don't experience what it is that God describes as this zone of blessing. Now, some of you still might be going, okay, but probably at week 6, you're going to roll out a campaign, aren't you? No campaign. As a matter of fact, let's put it on the screen. This is my first point this morning. This is not a campaign. Because it feels like every time you start talking about money in the church, it's really a campaign. So everybody say it with me. You ready? Say, no campaign. All right. No new buildings. No new planes for the staff. The ones we have are fine. We don't have planes. I'm kidding. Some of you are ready to walk out now. You have planes? This is not a money grab. I promise you that. This is not about us trying to get into your financial business, but it is asking you if you'll let God. And here's the reality. Even though that's not what we're doing, that's not the direction we're going, like none of us loves to come to church and hear somebody from a stage start to challenge us or talk to us about generosity and giving versus not giving. Like, I just doubt any of you woke up this morning and you went, man, I don't know who's speaking today, but I really hope they're going to talk about generosity and where my heart's at and whether or not I'm selfish. Woo! Like, nobody woke up and did that. So I want to be abundantly clear one last time. Not about money. What's it about? Blessing. And whether or not we're stepping into it. What I want to talk to you about is the entanglement of your wealth, your heart, and how that entanglement affects everything, from your joy to your relationships, to your life itself, to the ability to experience the blessings that God has to pour out on you. And some of you might be going, all right, dude, I'm going on my phone and checking out because you said wealth and I don't have any. Wrong. We all do. Wealth is a relative term. And you may not have as much as somebody else, but you have more than other people do. And it's not just stuff. It is the essence of what makes up all that you have in life. And that's not all physical, and it certainly isn't all financial. It is the reality, though, that God has put stuff in our lives. And here's the thing. He's not trying to take things away from you. I would even go so far as to say this. I think when God looks at us and sees the essence of our lives that we would describe as wealth, I think he wants to give us more than we presently have. Now, let me also be clear on this, because some of you are going, hey, did new guy just shift over to prosperity gospel? Let's pull him off the stage. Not at all. I think the prosperity gospel, which I want to be very clear for a moment, it's going to feel at different times throughout the course of the series like we're stepping a little bit close to that line. Because there's just an unavoidable reality in the Bible that God says, when you live my ways, there is a response that comes from me. And I think that there is this whole line of teaching, this prosperity gospel teaching, that has taken that truth and twisted and created one of the highest forms of heresy that has ever come into the church. For some of you, you're going, I don't know what the prosperity gospel is. Think TV preachers that do the whole, give God $1 and he'll give you back 10. Like, no, nonsense. God is not sitting around in heaven going, you know what, I just really hope my people catch a vision to get. That's not what he's doing. But he does want us to catch a vision to be people who give. God is not going, I hope that they want to just keep getting more and more and more. And so if I can just convince them to give to me, then I'll give them more. That's not how it works. I want to actually give you a verse that just make sure I drive this point home. Because I'm telling you, throughout the series, there's going to be moments where you're going to go, wait a minute, is that what we're teaching right now? It's not. So one of the go-to verses for a lot of prosperity preachers comes out of a book in the Bible called Luke. I'm going to read it for you. Luke chapter 6, verse 37 says this. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. This is the verse. A good measure pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. That is like a go-to verse for a lot of prosperity preachers. See, God wants to press it down, shake it together, and have it run over. So you give, and he's going to give back to you. How often is money mentioned in that passage? Zero. What's mentioned is judgment, condemnation, forgiveness. Here's what he's saying. If you live a life that gives judgment to other people, guess what you're getting back? Double portion of judgment. If you live a life that gives criticism to people, guess what you're getting back? Double portion of criticism. If you live a life that gives encouragement to people, guess what you're getting back? Double portion of encouragement. I had a mom come into my office years ago, sits on my couch, her 3 kids are out in the hall, inside my door, she shuts the door, and she just starts sobbing. She's like, these kids, I don't know why they treat me this way. They're so mean to me. They yell at me all the time. They're so rude. I'm their mom, and I don't know what to do. And I try to discipline them, and they don't. She's on it. I'm like, I'm ready to go out there and smack these kids around. I'm like, you treat your mom better. And I'm getting mad at these kids, and she's telling me more and more. And at one point, they're just being kids. They're not inappropriate. They're playing in the hall. She gets up. She goes to the door. She opens my office. She goes, shut your mouths or I'm going to come out there and smack every one of you. I just don't know why they treat me so bad, and they yell at me all the time. They're always just so mad. And I'm like, I got an idea. Right, so you give yelling to your kids, what are you getting back? A double portion of yelling. So let me take you back to Matthew where we started, because Jesus does talk about this idea of our wealth and our heart and how it's all intertwined and what he wants to do with it. So Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So here's a picture that God gives us. There are 2 buckets you can live your life to fill up. I don't know if you have a real bucket list or not, but everybody's life is a bucket list. It's all the things that we want to do, experiences we want to have, stuff we want to acquire. And here's the reality. God says this, I'm not against you amassing wealth. Matter of fact, I think he wants us to amass piles of it, just in the right bucket. But the truth is, if we're honest with ourselves, most of us, myself included, have a tendency to spend the overwhelming majority of our time and efforts trying to fill up this one. Trying to do everything we can to put stuff in this bucket that Jesus describes as earth. Whether it's, I just rated my kids' toy box, so bear with me. Whether it's accomplishments, there's a trophy, or the right car. I don't know who's driving that one. This is Barbie's suitcase, so trips and vacations. You certainly can't get through life without that. I don't even know if I can say it on stage without having a copyright issue. iPhone. Or the right house, right? We got to get the right neighbor. I told you I rated my kids' stuff. And this is what we do. We spend all of our life trying to fill up this bucket. And here's the reality. And I know you know this, but sometimes we need to be reminded of it. Everything you put in here has one destiny. One day it's going to be dumped into a landfill with dirty diapers. That's where it's going. You're going to work your heart out for it, and that's where it's headed. Years ago when I was in college and I met my wife, we decided at one point that it was better to be poor together than poor separate. So we got married young, got married in college in between my 2nd and 3rd year. And so I was at a point in my life where I realized, I have no money. I'm a broke college student. I had to do the worst thing imaginable at that time in my life, and I had to go ask my dad if I could move back home for a season. I was like, oh. So I'm like, Dad, I got to save up money. Can I move back home? So he said, yeah, you can do that. At the same time, I was also interviewing for a new job to try and make more money, and all of this collided into one fateful day where I had every worldly possession that I owned in the back of my car because I was in the process of moving on the way to the interview. My car was a Dodge Omni Horizon. You may remember that? No, here's a picture if you don't. Why does everybody laugh? It was my car. It's all I could afford. True story. Actually, I didn't buy it. My soon-to-be father-in-law did. That's another story. So I'm driving that car. I literally have everything in it. I'm on 94 going westbound right by the Harper exit. If you can think of it, it's a big slope down into a field. This guy does a 3-lane change, clips my car, sends me into a spin. I stop, facing traffic, heart's racing. I'm like, and all of a sudden I feel my car go, because I was on the edge, and I rolled it over 5 times down that hill. Flattened the entire thing. Every window blew out. The whole roof caved in. The brackets on my seat broke, and I went flat. That's what saved my life, because the roof caved in so far, it smashed my steering wheel. I was unconscious for a little bit, but I actually got up and walked out of that car. I kid you not. There was an ambulance there, picked me up, took me to the hospital, and I had to spend a couple days there. And I get out, and I realize I literally have nothing. I have no clothes, I have no possessions, and I have this just very real moment of having to face the fact that everything I put here is headed to that place one day. I also remember thinking, not today, I got no pants, so I had to go to the junkyard and get my stuff. I needed shoes, I had no shorts, I literally had nothing, so my to-be father-in-law took me to go get my stuff. That's where it's all going. In the book in the Bible, in Proverbs, this is what it says about the destiny of that bucket. Proverbs on your screen. Do not wear yourselves out to get rich, and do not trust your own cleverness. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone. For they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. Even before I flattened that car, I never walked around like, check out my vehicle, I'm the man. It was more like, please hold together at 60 miles an hour. Like it just was never anything great and spectacular. But here's the crazy thing. There was a time when that car was hot stuff. Look at it. I found this ad, believe it or not. Like there was a day that somebody looked at that ad and went, oh, I gotta have me one of those. And they went and bought it. And the car I actually rolled down a hill, somebody drove that off a lot at one point and showed it off to their friends. They're like, check out my new Horizon. They're like, whoa. Now where's it at? It is dust and rust in a landfill somewhere. Listen, man, that thing, just like everything else we put in here, it's all headed to the same place. I don't care how hard you work for it. That's where every bit of it is going. Every bit. Not a one of us is going to get to heaven one day and have an encounter like this. God to walk up to you and go, oh, you're the guy that had that awesome boat. Woo! Hey, Peter, Paul, come here. This is the dude with the updated kitchen I was just telling you about. Like, that's not going to happen. He's not going to care. Why? Because all of it's going to be right here. And so he says, listen, you can live to fill this one up. But it's going here. But here's the incredible thing. If God is true to his word, he says, if you live your life to fill this one up, not only does this get dumped into eternity with you, it actually has impact now. Living a life to fill this one up is part of what walks us into this zone of blessing, where God goes, if that's how you're going to live with open hands, watch how I do. And this is where the prosperity guys get it all wrong sometimes, because they twist it and they feed into our greed by saying, so do that so God gives you more. That's not the point. But like a good parent, God says, if you will walk the way I tell you to walk, value what I tell you to value, and use your life and your stuff for what I say matters, watch how I respond. But which bucket we live for has everything to do with who has our heart. So how do we shift where our heart and our stuff is? There's this passage in the Old Testament in a book called Deuteronomy where God long ago laid out this incredible practice with his people. It was a practice of opening up their hands in a way that had the power to actually shift their heart and impact all of this. So I want to wrap up with this for just a minute. Deuteronomy in the Old Testament part of the Bible. If you have a Bible, go ahead and go there with me. If not, it's on the screen. Chapter 15, verse 7 says this. If anyone is poor among your fellow Israelites, if any of the towns of the land the Lord your God is giving you, do not harden your heart. Heart. It's always been about the heart for God. Do not have a hardened heart or tight-fisted towards them. Because that's the flow, right? You harden this, you will grip this. He says, don't have a hard heart. Don't be tight-fisted towards them. Verse 8, rather be open-handed and freely lend them whatever they need. Be careful not to harbor this wicked thought. The 7th year, the year for canceling debts, is near. So that you do not show ill will towards the needy among your fellow Israelites and give them nothing. They may then appeal to the Lord against you, and you will be found guilty of sin. So here's what's happening. God had created this incredible thing in the economy of his people for forgiving debt called the year of Jubilee. It was a very real thing where every 7 years as the calendar rolled over, when this year hit, there was a cancellation of every debt. Whether it was a debt of servitude or whether it was a debt of stuff borrowed or whether it was a debt of money given, every 7 years, every debt gone. Anybody else would like that brought back now, or is that just me? Like, bring it back. Like every 7 years, this is what happened. So this is literally the picture that God's saying. If your neighbor comes to you and says, hey, I'm kind of having a rough spell, I need to borrow some things, he says this, don't have this thought. Well, you know what? The year of Jubilee is only 6 months away, and there's no way you're going to be able to repay me everything that I just gave you, if I give you, so yeah, no, I'm not going to loan to you. And God says, if you do that, that is indication of a selfish heart. And did you catch what he described a selfish heart as? Matter of fact, even the thought of that, he says, is wicked. Wicked. God says, that's a selfish heart, and selfishness I see as wickedness. I'm going to be honest with you. I hate that reality. Because some of you in this room are just naturally more generous. You just give easier. And some of you are more like me. It's really hard. I grew up with very little, in a very poor home, in a very poor community. And so for me, when I have stuff, it becomes more difficult to open my hands up, and I have to face in those moments the reality that God says, even the thought of you saying, I will grip my hand, I don't want to share. He says, Craig, that is wickedness, and if you're convicted of it because your friend comes to me, it's sin. That's how stark God looks at those moments that we close off our hearts to be greedy with what we have. So let me ask this question. Why do you think God created giving? And just think about it. Because all throughout the Bible, there is an ongoing practice that God invites his people into to give. Whether it's encouragement or time or resources or money. Like, why didn't he just say, you know what, keep it all to yourself, take care of yourself, get what you need, let everybody else do the same? Now, when we ask that question in the context of the church, a lot of times, here's the thought and the response. I guess to further the work of the church? And I would say no. Because the being who can sneeze and create a planet doesn't need your resources. When he's like, Hachoo, we'll call that one Pluto. Like, he doesn't need your stuff. God's not in heaven going, man, if those Kensington people don't start giving, I'm going to have to shut the lights off up here. These bills are just too much. Like, doesn't need it. So why? Well, Robert Morris says it in his book this way, and I love it. He says, God created giving to work selfishness and greed out of our lives. In other words, hear this. God didn't create giving for his benefit. He created it for ours. For ours. Now, I also want to be honest with you. Some of you, ladies, you may know this already. You may not. I'm just going to be honest and tell you that there's at least one area in our lives as men that I don't know that we will ever get over being selfish. You ready? Stop eating our food. We don't like to share our food. When we go through the line and we get an order of fries, there's not multiple so you can have some. They're ours. Even the ones in the bottom of the bag, ours, not yours. Okay? The only time this rule can be breached is when it's the father buying them for the sons and daughters. Dad tax. We are teaching them lessons of life. We may take 3 or more, but you may not take ours. The other day, my wife and I, we went to Starbucks, pull up in the line, And she's laughing. She knows what I'm going to tell her, and I didn't tell her I was going to say this. We get in the line. I'm like, hey, babe, do you want something? I'm buying. I got plenty on my app. I'll buy for you. No, I don't want anything. You sure? No. Next car up. You want your Americano? No. You want your latte? No. Come on, honey, what do you want? No, I'm buying. No. We get up to the speaker. Can I help you? I'm like, come on, seriously, do you want something? No. So I get my drink. The lady's handing me my drink. And I say to my wife, I'm surprised you didn't want anything. She goes, well, I'm just going to drink some of yours. No, you're not. It's mine. Mine. We have to deal first with a selfish heart. Number 2, we have to deal with a grudging heart. If you go back to the passage in Deuteronomy, we read this. Verse 10, give generously to them and do so without a grudging heart. Then, because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. Have you ever given something away and like immediately started to regret it? You're like, oh, what did I do? And it doesn't have to be money. Maybe it was something else. Maybe it was time. You're like, why did I volunteer to do that? Why did I offer to do that? This last year, I was in Cuba with the church I came from, short-term trip that we took there. And I have gotten in the habit over the years of taking these trips with that church of realizing that there are never the right tools on the work projects we were on. So I have a background in construction, so I started getting in the habit of taking a bag, like a huge bag, duffel bag full of all my tools. So I'd bring everything down there with me so that we could use them and then bring them back home and we'd have all the stuff that we needed. So I did that in Cuba as well. And what blew me away being in Cuba is that unlike anywhere else I've been, including even Haiti, which is so impoverished, but you can still find stuff. But in Cuba, you can't find anything. So one day I'm literally using my electric drill, and the pastor that we're partnered up with, he's standing there just staring at me. And I'm thinking, do you want to use it? And he goes, I've never even seen one. And I said, well, how would you get one? And he says, I never will. He says, maybe the only way I could ever get one is if I got it on the black market somewhere, and if I got caught, I'd go to prison. And so about midway through the week, God just put it on my heart to give my tools away. And so at the end of the week, I called him over with our interpreter, and then I pointed to the bag, and I just said, it's yours. And he ran over, and he grabbed the drill, and he goes, the drill? And I went, no, the whole bag. And he's like, oh. He starts sobbing. I start sobbing. We embrace. It was a powerful moment. And he walks out with the tools, and I'm standing there, and like 5 minutes later, I go, what did I just do? He would have been fine with the drill. I just gave him everything. Doggone it. There's even been moments that I've been home this last year, and I go into the garage. I'm like, I need to get my, it's not in the garage, it's in Cuba. and I have to remember in those moments that God says he loves a joyful giver. Because greed will attack your heart before you give, and grief will attack your heart after. And so we have to be aware that there is this tendency to give and then regret. And God says, no. I want you to give, and I want you to be full of joy when you do it. And so instead, when I go into the garage, I've intentionally not replaced those tools yet. Because when I go into the garage and I go to grab that drill, it's a moment for me in that minute to choose joy. And to remember, I got to do that. I didn't have to do it. Number 3, we're going to develop a generous heart. Go back to verse 14 in the same passage we've been, says this, supply them liberally from your flock, your threshing floor, and your winepress, and give them as the Lord your God has blessed you. We're going to develop a generous heart. So develop is the key word, right? Because not a one of us are born with a generous heart. Which is why all of us as parents, we know this. What's the first thing you have to teach your kids? Share. Yeah. You have to teach them to share. I'm going to break this to you. If you're a new parent waiting for your kids to speak and you're like, are they going to say mom first or dad first? Neither. You know what they're going to say first? Mine. You're like, no, share, mine. Like, that's our heart. And some of us go through our whole lives that way. Mine. The Apostle Paul in the Bible once wrote that when I was a child, I thought like a child and I acted like a child. But when I became a man, I put childish ways behind me. It is childish to go through life, mine. Why? Well, because of what Psalms tells us on the screen. Nothing's yours. The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. This is why generosity is actually an issue of maturity. Because spiritual immaturity goes through life going, mine, 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 where spiritual maturity goes through life saying, his, his, his. And when you live that way, the natural outpour is to open your hands in generosity to the people and to the opportunities around you. Last one is this: develop a grateful heart. Again, going back to the text that we've been in. Verse 15. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God redeemed you. That is why I give you this command today. I love this because God says, you know why I'm telling you to do everything I'm telling you to do at the year of Jubilee, to not hold it against them, to open your hands, because of all the ways I've done so for you. May that be the outpour. And here's the reality. If you are a follower of Jesus, then you were once a captive to Egypt as well. And it wasn't a place in the desert with a man named Pharaoh, but it's what the Bible describes as sin, and it's what kept you from God. It's why Jesus came to this world. It's why he died on the cross, to free you from that captivity. And I'm just concerned that it's so easy for us to go through life, the longer we do in relationship with God, to start to forget the incredibleness of what God has done for us. To forget what David once called the joy of my salvation. And to forget everything else he has done for us as well. Now, I'm not great at this, but a few years ago, a friend of mine challenged me to do this, and I try to do it as good as I can. And most days, I'm all right. But to have at least a moment every day where I stop at some point and for a second acknowledge whatever I'm in the middle of as a gift from God and thank him. Whether that's I'm driving and I say thanks for the car. Whether I'm at work and I say thanks for my job. Whether I'm with my kids and I say thank you for my kids. To have some way of acknowledging on a regular basis, God, you are so good and you have given me so much. We've even, in our home, we've implemented a practice recently to do this more intentionally with our kids, because my wife and I realized we probably don't do this enough with our kids, where we lead them into moments of acknowledging all that God has done for us. So maybe you even want to borrow this one. We have this little jar that we just started a couple weeks ago. We keep on the center of the table. There's a stack of 3x5 cards in it. And at any given time throughout the day, my wife or myself will grab one of those cards and just write down a sentence that reminds us of a time that God did something, like the time that fill in the blank. And then at dinner, we'll have one of the kids pull out one of the cards. And then whether it's mine or whether it's hers, we'll share that story of just a moment of God just intervening into our lives and demonstrating his goodness. And now we've started to ask the kids to do the same, because they also have moments in their life where God has showed up. And I want us as a family to have regular time of acknowledging, God, you have been so good to us. Because when you live with a generous heart, that generous heart is an outflow of gratitude for how God has been generous to you. But you gotta measure your heart. And you've gotta be honest with yourself. Is it greedy? Is it joyful? Is it regretful? Is it giving? My son, when he was born with a condition called VSD. It's a ventricular septal defect. He has several holes in his heart between the left and right chamber. And so throughout his life, we've had to monitor his heart. This is actually a picture of him when he was 10 years old. And so this was a regular practice that we've had to go through of just putting all these leads on it to see what his heart is doing and what the condition is. And I feel like that reality for us has forced me to have to be more aware of my own heart, both on a physical and a spiritual level. All of us need to be doing that more often, monitoring the condition of our heart. Because as Jesus says, there is this inseparable reality between where your heart is, what you do with your treasure, and your ability to experience the blessings that I think God longs to pour out on his people. So here's how I want us to end this morning. We're going to do two things. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to collect up our offering this morning. And here's what I want you to hear from me right now. This could feel like a really weird moment to do it. You're like, wait, we just did all this and now you're going to take up the offering. Actually, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to encourage you to give absolutely nothing today unless you can do it in light of what God has done for me and gratitude and joy. And I want to be honest about that. Like, if that's not present for you this morning, don't do it. I might get a talking to in the office on Tuesday, but that's okay. Because we believe this. We're not after your money, and God's not after your money, but he is after your heart. And where your treasure is, finish it. There your heart will be also. So those bags are going to go around right now, and I just want to encourage you as they do to do what's appropriate for you in that moment. And here's what I want to ask you as that goes by. Would you do this with me? I want to give you a short, simple prayer that I want to lead you to pray. Matter of fact, would you even open your hands and just place them on your lap? Create a physical posture of openness to receive whatever it is that God wants to give or say. And here's the prayer I just want to ask you to pray, whether you do it out loud or whether you do it in your head. Dear God, what are you trying to say to me today? And what do you want me to do? Amen.
When it doesn't go my way, I know that it is not the end. I'm trusting you with better plans I haven't even dreamt of yet. I know that you are for me when everything's against me. I put all my hope in you. Jesus, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I know you never fail. I will trust in you. Jesus, I will. I will. Jesus, I will. I will. I don't know how the story ends, but I know that you finished it. I'll close my eyes and just let go and fall into my only hope. There's safety in the falling when I surrender fully. I put all my hope in you. Jesus, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I know you never fail. I will trust in you. Jesus, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I know you never fail. I will trust in you. Jesus, I will. I will. Jesus, I will. I will.
Everything I know is God, you're in control. In every little detail, you are close. I'll never be alone. 'Cause here in the unknown, the power of your presence fills my soul. Everything I know is God, you're in control. In every little detail, you are close. I'll never be alone. 'Cause here in the unknown, the power of your presence fills my soul. Jesus, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I know you never fail. I will trust in you. Jesus, I will
Yeah. So good. When I was a kid, we used to go to this place called Point Peely. And I remember this one time, I don't know how old I was, young, I was under 10. And I remember looking as the waves were crashing on the shore, and I was like, I think that's $1. And I ran over, it was a $20 bill. Like when you're a kid, when you're like 8 years old, that's like gold, man. You just found $1 million. So I remember grabbed that, and I ran back and I shared that with my dad. I was like, I found $20. So my dad's like, oh, that's great, that's great. So I'm one of 7 kids. I don't think there were 7 around, there definitely weren't 7 around at that point, but there were still several of us. We get in the car to go home, and we stop at Dairy Queen. And I'll never forget this. My dad goes, hey, Craig, you found $20. Do you want to buy ice cream for everybody? Like, no, not at all. And he just kept pestering me about it. Like, well, I mean, that was pretty cool. I feel like it's almost like, this is what he said, it's almost like God just kind of gave that to you. Why don't you share that with your brothers and sisters and buy them ice cream? And I was like, no. So I ended up buying everybody ice cream. I was like, and I was very begrudging about it. I'm like, buy ice cream, spent my $20 the whole way home. It was so cool. We get back home, and a few days later, my dad says, hey, come take a walk with me. And one of our habits when I was growing up is my dad and I would always walk together, and our destination was McDonald's. We would walk up to the local McDonald's about a mile away, and we would sit there, and we would eat an order of fries. We'd both get a large fry. And, usually he'd get the large fry, and I'd get like a smaller or medium. But we'd eat our fries, and my dad was never a real talker, so that was like his way of relating. We would just have that moment together. But on this particular day, my dad took me there, and we walked inside, and he said, hey, today, we're going supersized fry and milkshake. And I was like, what? Because my dad never bought milkshake. You don't buy a lot when you got that many kids. And he said, I was really, really thankful for how you shared with your brother and sister the other day. I was really thankful that he's blind and couldn't see my bad attitude. But I was like, oh, okay, Dad. And it was just such a cool moment. I hope that you hear that that's what this is about. Because it could be so easy for you to walk out of here today and think that this is about money. This is about a church trying to get your stuff. This is about us really believing that God is true to his word. That as a father, when his children learn to do this, he does it more. He's the God that walks you to McDonald's and says, the menu's yours. And it may not be all monetary back. That's where the prosperity guys get it wrong. But it will be what you need, when you need, to the measure you need. So we have a team up here this morning that wants to pray with you, encourage you. If there's any way that we can do that, whether it's something that got stirred in you from today or has nothing to do with today, take advantage of them. Come up here and let them do that with you. And for the rest of us, just have a great day. It's beautiful out there. Hopefully you have something planned to enjoy the weather. Have a phenomenal day, a phenomenal week, and hopefully we'll see you next Sunday.